Okay, hi everybody. I guess we'll start. Hold on, let me just get myself together here.
Yeah, quick thank you on behalf of Torah in Motion for everybody for coming, and we hope to see you at our upcoming events, which I will give a little bit more detail on at the end. And thank you so much to Rabbanit Simi Peters for giving
Simi,
us
just Simi.
Oh, okay, will do. Yeah, and thank you so much. I'll put the sources in the chat right now if anybody wants to follow along on their own.
Great, terrific. All right, so I'm going to start by reminding everybody about what we did last week. There were two issues, there were two topics that I wanted to finish covering with you. One of them is the mention of Shabbat, which we talked about last week. The fact that Shabbat features in this section of Yirmiyahu, in this parak, and that for Yirmiyahu, it is a sufficiently important, or the Nevuah, in the Nevuah of Yirmiyahu, it is a sufficiently important topic that he brings it up. And we're going to look at a couple of the Mefarshim here with regard to that. I just want to make sure we're okay. All right, so let me first of all share the the sources with you. We're going back to the psukim that we did last week, just part of them. That's the first topic that we're going to cover. The second topic we're going to cover is the connection between the performative aspects of Nivu'ah and what the Nevi'im actually do, and what underlies those performative aspects. Okay, it's come up already a couple of times, and it will come up again further, and we have to talk about why that's important. Okay, so right now what we're looking at is Yirmiyahu Yud Zayin, starting from Pasuk Yutet. We read this through, but just to refresh your memories, hang on, let me just get my spotlight. Okay, Ko amar Hashem Elai, thus Hashem said to me, Halofa amadeta b'shar b'nei ha'am, b'nei am, go and stand at the gates of the children of the people, asher yavo bo malchei Yehuda v'asher yitzu bo, that the kings of Yehuda go out and come back in, uv'chol sha'arei Yerushalayim, and all the gates of Yerushalayim. V'amarta alehem, and you should say to them, Shim'u dvar Hashem malchei Yehuda v'chol yoshvei Yerushalayim. Hear the words of Hashem, the kings of Yehuda, and all of Yehuda, and all the inhabitants of Yerushalayim, habaim b'sha'arim ha'eleh, who come into these gates. Now, here I just want to point out, as I said, the issue has come up before, and we've mentioned it, but it's clear that Hashem wants Yirmiyahu to deliver this particular nevuah in a particular place. That's what I mean by the sort of performative aspects of the nevuot, right? That there are things that the Navi does to enact the nevuot. And this is a milder example because it just means standing in a particular place. But we've already seen that when Yirmiyahu is told not to have children, that the Abarbanel points out, I think very profoundly, that it's not just a question of Yirmiyahu doing something, it is that Yirmiyahu's life has to actually be a symbolic representation or a living example of the things that he's talking about, right? I am not going to have children because if I have children, they will die. That means your children are going to die. That means the city is going to be destroyed. The people are going to be exiled. All of the prophecies, all the prophetic messages that I'm giving to you, they're real. They're real. And so much so that is why I can't marry and have children, right? Because people are going to die. Okay, same thing here. He comes to the gates. Ko amar Hashem, thus says Hashem, Hishamru benafshotechem, guard your souls, va'al tisu masa b'yom Shabbat, v'havetem b'sharei Yerushalayim, and do not carry loads on the day of Shabbat and bring them into the gates of Yerushalayim. Of course, this is symbolic, and the next pasuk also, of doing business on Shabbat, because you bring merchandise in, you take merchandise out. V'lo totziu masami batechem b'yom haShabbat, and do not take any loads out of your houses on Yom HaShabbat. V'chol melacha lo ta'asu, and do not do any labor, any creative labor on Shabbat. V'kidashtem et Yom HaShabbat kasher tziviti et avotechem. And you shall sanctify the day of Shabbat as I commanded your fathers. And if you don't do that, the Navi goes on to say, we're not going to read the whole thing, we read it last week. If you don't do that, if you don't refrain from working on Shabbat, or rather, if you refrain from working on Shabbat, the gates of the city will be the entry and exit for kings and ministers, the continuation of the kingdom, men of Jerusalem will come, inhabitants of Jerusalem will come, men of Yehudah will come. The city will be here forever, right? If you keep Shabbat. But if you don't keep Shabbat, then the gates will be burned down, okay, which is actually what happens. Now, we noticed, or again, I pointed out that in Yeshayahu Parak Nun Chet, which is the end of the Haftarah of Yom Kippur that we read from Yeshayahu, Yeshayahu says something similar. Im tashimi Shabbat raglecha, asot chafatzecha biyom kodshi. You know, you have to withdraw your legs from the marketplace and not do work on my holy day. As titanag al Hashem, then you will take pleasure in Hashem, and God will sustain you, and you will ride high, etc. Yechezkel also talks about this. Now, the connection of place to what will happen, or the gates are the instruments of violation, right? Moving from reshut to reshut, moving from one jurisdiction to another is a problem on Shabbat, and the gates themselves will be destroyed because they will be instruments of sin in this particular way. And that's why he stands at the gates that are used by everybody, and he delivers his message there. And that's in keeping with the idea that we had, that there's something performative about what Yirmiyahu does. Just as, although the prohibition against him having children was his own personal tragedy and had its symbolic significance, it was also in some sense performative. And we have to figure out why that is done. And I'll tell you why that's important. If you go to Sefer Melachim and you look at the way in which false prophets mimicked true prophets, one of the things that they would do is they would engage in, I will call it performance art, right? So for example, when Yehoshaphat Melech Yehudah comes to Achav Melech Yisrael, and they make a pact together to fight against the Arameans, Achav's false prophets take out the horns of an animal and they gore each other with it to show that God will defeat Aram. And Yehoshaphat, of course, recognizes right away that they're false prophets for other reasons. He recognizes that they're false prophets. But if you're going to be a false prophet, you're going to learn how to mimic the true prophets. You're going to learn how to do that well. And one of the things is to do these performative actions. So if that's the case, we have to understand why do the Nevi'im do these performative actions. In the case of Yirmiyahu, at least I can think of 3 examples, 4, 5, where Hashem tells him to do these things and he does them. So then the question becomes why? Okay, but let's go back to the concept of Shabbat here, featuring in the words of Yirmiyahu, because as the Radak points out, this does not seem to be the worst sin that was being committed. Okay, so he says, if you will refrain from doing any work on Shabbat, the Radak says, we're over here, ladies and gentlemen, in last week's sources. Okay. And why God commanded Yirmiyahu to warn them about Shabbat. They had a lot of other sins in their hands, even including idol worship, which would certainly seem to be the worst sin. That which God commanded him to warn them about Shabbat, lefi sheshmirat Shabbat ikar gadol be'emunat hakel, because the keeping of Shabbat is a great principle. It's an essential item, if you will, in the belief in God, bechidush ha'olam, in the creation of the world, uve'emunah ba'otot uve'motim, and in the belief in miracles and signs that are in the Torah or in Nevi'im and Ketuvim, uvekiyum kol haTorah, and in fulfilling all of the Torah. In other words, Shabbat is not another mitzvah. I think instinctively we all recognize this. I know that sometimes the designation that is used to characterize fidelity to halacha is he's a shomer Shabbat, she's a shomeret Shabbat. There's something fundamental, it's a key mitzvah, it's a cornerstone mitzvah. And he says it's essential when it comes to belief that God created the world, belief in the miracles, and in the fulfilling of the whole Torah. And he goes on, whoever keeps the Shabbat with real faith, is not going to sin with the rest of the commandments very quickly. Now, it's something about Shmirat Shabbat is going to, if you keep Shabbat faithfully, from a place of your head being on straight about it, you're not going to quickly transgress other commandments. Why? Well, he's going to go on and say a little bit more about this, but again, Shabbat is tacitly an acknowledgement, maybe not so tacitly, maybe more explicitly than that, is an acknowledgement that God is the creator of the world, and therefore, if you will, the boss. That God is in charge of the world, and that he determines what is right and wrong and what we have to do. So belief in Shabbat is a statement that you believe in God as creator of the world, and also creator of us, and also the master of everything. And that's sort of the antithesis, certainly, of idol worship. Right? It's an acknowledgement that the world really belongs to God. So a violation of Shabbat is going to be the subtext of the violation of Shabbat is that God is not in charge of everything. And that leaves the door open to many things, including Avodah Zarah. ואמרו רבותינו ז"ל, כל המשמר שבת כהלכתה, אפילו עובד עבודת כוכבים ומזלות כדור אנוש, מוחלין לו. Okay, and this Gemara, which we are going to look at here, it's Gemara in Shabbat. Hang on. It's Gemara in Shabbat, which we will look at here in a second, the source of which the Radak is quoting, that if anyone who keeps Shabbat halachically, keeps Shabbat, even if he worships idols like the generation of Enosh, he is forgiven. Shene'emar, this is a quote from Yeshayahu, not from Yirmiyahu. Ashrei Enosh ya'aseh zot. Happy is the man who will do this, who will keep Shabbat. Uven Adam yachazik ba, and the person who grasps it. Kol shomer Shabbat mechalalo. Whoever keeps Shabbat without violating it, the Gemara says, Al tikrei mechalalo. Don't say from violating it, ela machalo, machulo. He's forgiven. It's a play on words. Okay, we're going to read that, but let's take a look at that first of all from the Radak, the original source of the Radak here. And let me just check that everybody's sort of with me. Okay, like we're following. It's clear. It's not obscure. Okay, this is the problem with Zoom. I can't tell because you're not in the same room with me and I can't see all your faces. So I'm going to trust that if you had a problem, you would make noise or something. Raise your hand and tell me. Okay, so let's go back to this quote because it's important. Okay, the Radak quotes this Gemara in Shabbat, and we're going to look at it now together because at first glance, it sounds totally strange. Okay? Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yonatan. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said in the name of Rabbi Yonatan, Kol hamishamel Shabbat gilchato, whoever preserves, guards, keeps Shabbat according to halacha, which means essentially the prohibitions of Shabbat, right? Refraining from labor on Shabbat. Because there are two aspects of Shabbat. There's the zachol, the remembering, and, if you will, the idea of Shabbat. And then there's the shamo, which is the guarding, the keeping of Shabbat in its prohibitions. Afilu oved avodah zara kidor enosh, even if he worships idols like the generation of Enosh, mochalin lo. He's forgiven. Okay, so let's explain what that means. The avodah zarah, the idol worship of the generation of Enosh, is what is known in halachic terms as avodat shituf. That is to say, idol worship not in the purest sense, if one can talk about a pure sense of idol worship, but not idol worship where you bow to the idol, or you worship the star, or you worship the mountain, or whatever natural phenomenon you turn into your God, and you think that God is in those objects, right? That's the, if you will, the crudest and, if you will, the purest form of avodah zarah, right? This sculpture, this rock, this whatever it might be, this tree is God, right? That is pure avodah zarah. But in the generation of Enosh, and this is part of a larger discussion, I'll just give you the definition, it was avodat shituf. Avodat shituf means that you know that God does not reside in the object, but you sort of channel your worship of God through that object, okay? Most of the poskim understand that, for example, Christianity is avodat shituf, right? There are parts of God, and you channel your worship through them, and that kind of thing. Okay. Now, pure avodah zarah is clearly forbidden and unforgivable, right? It's forgivable if you do tshuva, obviously, but it's unforgivable in the sense that it is a complete denial of the essence of God, of what we believe God to be. But avodat shituf, this sort of channeling of your worship of God through an idol, not because you think the idol has independent power, but because that's how you choose to serve God, that is absolutely forbidden, right? Certainly to any Jew, but it is a different level of mistake, or a different confusion, or a different level of denial of God. Okay, you do recognize that there's something that is of higher, something above the idol that is not contained in the idol, okay, or in the object of worship. If you keep Shabbat lahalacha, you keep Shabbat in the fullest halachic sense of the term, what you are saying is, I acknowledge God as creator of the world, and I surrender my control over the world to him one day a week in recognition of his sovereignty over the world, the fact that he's the creator, the fact that he's the boss. So if you keep Shabbat, and it's, again, hard for us to picture a person who will keep the halachot of Shabbat and still, do a sort of modified form of idol worship, but that can be forgiven because, again, Shabbat stands in for this larger principle of God as totally sovereign, creator of the world, and the one who establishes and sets morality and conduct as we must follow it. Okay, so when Yirmiyahu, there is a connection here to avodah zarah. When Yirmiyahu when he rails against idol worship, as do Yeshayahu, as does Yechezkel, as do the Trei Asar, the minor prophets, so-called minor prophets, when he pronounces anathema upon avodah zarah. The flip side of that, or what buttresses that, is the belief or the practice of Shabbat Gilchata, carrying through the gates of the city, moving from one jurisdiction to another, does not seem like a big deal until you recognize that it is an assault upon the idea of God as the creator and master of the world, okay? And if you keep Shabbat, then you've got that. You've got that, even if perhaps you make the mistake of thinking you should channel your worship through something else. I'm just going to ask whoever it is to please mute themselves because I'm getting a feedback here. Carly, can you mute that? I am unmuted, but the rest of you stay muted because the noise is weird. Okay. The Radak, I'm sorry, not the Malbim, the Radak goes on and he says the following. Okay, והמצווה הראשונה שנצטוו ישראל קודם מתן תורה היא שבת. Okay, there is a tradition that says the Shabbat was given to the Jewish people at Marah before the giving of the Torah, which means that there is some sense in which Shmirat Shabbat, the keeping of Shabbat, precedes even the other commandments of the Torah. ואתה רואה כמה גדולה שמירת שבת, you see how great is the keeping of Shabbat, שהרי תלה חורבן ירושלים בשמירת שבת, because the text makes the destruction of Yerushalayim contingent upon the keeping or the violation of Shabbat. ומפסוק והצעתי אש בשעריה ואכלה ארמונות ירושלים, which is the pasuk that we have here in our perek, I will cause there to be a fire in her gates, and it will consume the palaces of Yerushalayim. Lamdu Chazal remez, Chazal learn an allusion, ba'amru, and they said, Ein hadleka mitzuya ela bebayit sheyesh bo chilul Shabbat. Fire, uncontrolled fire, is found in houses where there is chilul Shabbat. That doesn't mean in every house with chilul Shabbat, but it is something that is connected by the Navi. The gates of Yerushalayim will be burned down because of chilul Shabbat. Okay. And then we'll stop here. This is the Gemara that he's quoting here. You can take a look at it on your own. Let's now move on. Okay, so we are now going to take a little bit of a step back. Okay, any questions before I move on? Any questions? No. Okay, so let's take a look at our next source sheet. Okay. We're going to take a look at two short excerpts from Yirmiyahu, short-ish excerpts from Yirmiyahu. And then we're going to read a Ramban and Breshit to try to understand, again, the performative aspects of what the Navi does. Okay? All right. So we're stepping back a little bit to Perek Yudchet of Yirmiyahu. Because there are two images that are used here, two images of a potter or potter's shop that are used here. Okay, so let's go on. The word that was to Yirmiyahu from Hashem saying, Kum v'yaradeta beit hayotzel. Get up and go down to the house of the potter. Go to this place where there's a potter. V'shama ashmiacha dvarai. And there I will make you hear my word. I will make heard to you my word. Vayred beit hayotzel. And I went down to the house of the potter. And here he was doing work on the workbench, right? Now, potter takes clay and shapes it and forms it, right? You've all seen potters work, or you know what potters do. ונשחט הכלי אשר הוא עושה בחומר ביד היוצר. And the vessel that he was making was destroyed in the clay that was in the hand of the potter. ושב יעשהו כלי אחר, and he went back and he made it into another vessel, כאשר ישר בעיני היוצר לעשות, as was good in the eyes of the potter to make. Okay, if you've ever seen potters work, or certainly amateur potters, one of the things that you notice is very often as the pot is on the wheel or as they're free forming it, something goes wrong. The clay is wet. They smash it together and they reform it. They reconstitute it in a different form, right? They just not break it because it's soft. They smush it together and they create a new vessel. Okay, so Hashem wants him to go down to the potter's shop and to watch the potter making a pot. The vessel is imperfect, so in the hands of the potter, the clay, the raw material is used again and it becomes something else. Vayidvar Hashem elai lemor, and the word of Hashem was to me saying, Hachayotzer hazeh lo uchal lasot lachem Beit Yisrael, Neum Hashem? Can I not do to you, house of Israel, like this potter? You think I can't do what the potter did? Hine kachomer biyad hayotzer ken atem biyadi Beit Yisrael. Here, like clay, like raw material in the hand of the potter, thus you are in my hand, house of Israel. It's an interesting image, especially when it comes to the second image, because it sounds negative, but it actually can be seen in a very positive light. He goes on and he says, Rega daber al goy v'al mamlacha. At one instant, I will speak about a nation or a kingdom, lintosh v'lintotz ulahavid, to uproot and to shatter and to destroy. These, remember, are the words that God uses to Yirmiyahu in Perek Aleph, when he says that that's what his mission is going to be. These are three of the words of destruction that are used. V'shav hagoy hahu mera'ato asher dibarti alav, and that nation repents of the evil that I spoke about it. V'nichamti al hara'a asher chashavti la'asot lo, and I will change my mind about the evil that I thought to do to him. V'rega adaber al goy v'al mamlacha livnot v'lintoa. Those two words are also from the first perek of Yirmiyahu. And at one instant, I can speak about a nation or a kingdom to build and to plant, right? Go back to the first perek, that's what God says to Yirmiyahu. You're going to destroy and uproot and shatter and ruin and build and plant. But so at one moment I can say about this nation or kingdom that they will be built up or planted. And they will do evil in my eyes, not to listen to my voice. And I will change my mind about the good that I said to do to them. Okay, so it's a very flexible kind of image that we have here. As long as the clay is wet, right, God can do with it what he wants. So to be clay or material in the potter's hand is good if you change yourself for the good. And it's bad if you don't change yourself for the good. Okay, that's the first image of the potter that we have. Let's go back. Okay. Right now, again, this is the performative aspect. You go down to the potter's shop, you watch him do what he's doing, and you have this object lesson in your hand. And now say now to the people of Yehuda and the inhabitants of Yerushalayim, saying, Ko amar Hashem, thus says Hashem, Hine anochi yotzer alechem ra'a. Here I will create, I will form for you an evil, V'choshev alechem machashava. I'm thinking a thought about you. Shuvu na ish midalko hara'a ve'hitivu dalchechem u'ma'al alechem. Return now, each man from his evil way, and fix your bad deeds. Come back from your bad ways and fix your bad deeds. V'amru noash, and they said, we have given up. Ki acharei machshavotenu nelech, v'ish shrirot libo hara na'aseh. We will follow our thoughts, and each man will do whatever he desires, whatever his heart, the evil his heart desires. That's what we're going to do. So we have an interesting image here of wet clay that just gets smushed together, broken up, or not broken again, just put back in its basic form and reformed again. And I think here a key word is Choshev alechem machshava. A key phrase here is, I am thinking a thought about you. It's not executed yet. If you change your minds and you think differently and act differently, I can switch it, right? I can make a good decree, but you blow it, I can take that away, right? I can make a bad decree, you fix it, I can fix it. You're raw material at this point. And Yirmiyahu has to go down to the potter's shed or down to the potter's shop and sort of enact that, watch that happening so that he can talk about it from that point of view. Okay. The completion of this, remember, this is Perek Yud Chet, this is chapter 18. In Perek Yud Tet, the metaphor is completed, again, in a kind of performative way. And here it's more dramatic. Okay, so. Ko amar Hashem, thus said Hashem, haloch v'kanita bakbuk yotzer chares. Go and buy a flask, a bottle, a jar, right? A potter's jar of pottery. Okay, we're not talking about a glass jar here. Okay. We're talking about cheres. Cheres is raw, raw material, is clay. And a bakbuk yotzer is no longer raw or wet clay, it's baked clay. It becomes a bakbuk when it's baked. Well, the only thing you can do with baked clay is either use it or break it, right? So Hashem says, go buy a bottle, a formed vessel, a bottle made of pottery. Buy it from the elders of the people and from the elders of the Kohanim. Like do this in front of them. And go to Gei Ben Hinnom. Gei Ben Hinnom is the valley outside Yerushalayim. Those of you who know Yerushalayim know that there's this big green valley, the Kidron, Nachal Kidron, right outside the walls of the old city. Today it's called Sultan's Pool, right? They have concerts there now. It's nice. They have concerts right outside the walls of the old city. It's a valley. It's like a deep valley, and it's wide. And it's called the Valley of Ben Hinnom because the Ben Hinnom family owned that valley. And it was the place in which people sacrificed their children to the Molech. It was a place of child sacrifice, notoriously. It's also called Tophet. It's another name that's given for it. Okay, so you go out to this place, and again, this is clearly performative, right? And he says, go, sorry, let me get my annotating thing here. Okay, go to Gei Ben Hinnom, Valley of Ben Hinnom, which is at the opening of the Charsit gate. I'll explain what the Charsit gate is in a minute. And call there the words that I will speak to you. Now, it could be, different commentators understand this differently, Shal HaCharsit, the Charsit gate might have been the eastern gate because Charsit is another name for the sun. Okay, Charsit is another biblical word for the sun. It's not used very often. But it also could be seen to be connected to the word cheres, which is pottery, clay, something made out of clay. And it could be that there were potters' workshops there in that eastern gate, or in that gate that led into the city of Yerushalayim. Okay, so I want you to dafka, I want you specifically to say these words there. V'amalta, and you will say, Shim'u dvar Hashem malchei Yehuda v'yoshvei Yerushalayim. Hear the words of Hashem, kings of Yehuda and inhabitants of Yerushalayim. Ko amar Hashem tzvakot Elokei Yisrael, thus says Hashem, God of hosts, Lord of Israel, Hineni mevi ra'al hamakom hazeh asher kol shom'a titzalna oznav. Here I will bring evil upon this place, that anyone who hears it, their ears will ring. Yan asher azavuni, because you have abandoned me. Vayinakru et hamakom hazeh, and you have made this place alien. You've alienated this place. Vayikatru bo le'elohim acherim, and you have made offerings to foreign gods here. Asher lo yida'um, they did not know. Asher lo yida'um hema bavotehem umalchei Yehuda, that they did not know. Who was the they? Them, their ancestors, and the kings of Yehuda. Umal'u et hamakom hazeh dam nikiyim, and they filled this place with the blood of innocence. Uvanu et bamot haba'al lisrofet b'nehem ba'esh olot laBaal, and they built altars to the Baal. The Baal is a foreign god. It's not even native to Canaan. It was brought into Eretz Yisrael by Izebel, the wife of Achav. They built altars to the Baal, lisrof et b'nehem ba'esh, to burn their children in fire. Olot laBaal, as burnt offerings to the Baal. Asher lo tziviti velo dibarti velo alta libi, that I did not command, I did not talk about this, and it never even occurred to me. Right? God doesn't want the sacrifice of children. Lachen, therefore, Hine yamim ba'in Hashem, here days are coming, says Hashem, velo yikarei lamakom hazeh od hatofet v'gei ben Hinnom. This place will not be called anymore Hatofet, which was its name, or the valley of Ben Hinnom, Ki'im Gei HaHarega, but rather the killing valley, the valley of killing. It's like we talk about killing fields in English, right? Uvakoti et atzat Yehuda v'Yerushalayim b'makom hazeh, and I will empty out the counsel of Judah and Yerushalayim in this place, the wisdom, the advice, the counsel, their thinking. Bakoti is related to the word bakbuk, right? Bakbuk is a jar or a flask. It's called that because you empty it out. That's what it's for. It's for filling and emptying. So I will empty, again, it's an allusion to the object Yirmiyahu was talking about. I will empty out the counsel of Yehuda and Yerushalayim in this place. And I will cause them to fall by the sword before their enemies and in the hands of those who seek their lives. And I will give their corpses food for the birds of the heavens and the animals of the earth. I will make this city desolate, and a shreka means a place that people whistle over, whistle in the sense of, phew, like that's a way of expressing horror. All who pass over it will be desolate and will whistle over all of its blows. And I will feed them the flesh of their sons and the flesh of their daughters. They killed their sons and daughters for the sake of the Baal in this valley, I will make them eat the flesh of the sons of their sons and their daughters. The famine will be so bad that they will eat their own children. V'ish b'sar re'ehu yochelu, and a man, the flesh of his friend he will eat. B'matzo u'v'matzok asher yatziku lahem oivehem uvakshei nafsham. In the siege and in the torment that the enemies will torment them and those who seek their souls. Then God tells him to do the following. V'shavarta habakbuk le'enei ha'anashim holchim otach. Break this flask or bottle in front of the eyes of the people who are with you. In other words, performatively shatter it, throw it down, break it. Because this is the response, if you will, or this is the other bookend. If we talk about the image of the wet clay, where it can still be fixed, the only thing you can do with a clay bottle that has been baked, if you can't use it anymore, is you break it. It breaks. It can't be fixed. It can't be reshaped or reformed. The decree is fulfilled, or the decree is set. V'amarta alehem, and you should say to them, Ko amar Hashem tzvakot, thus says Hashem, God of hosts, Kacha eshbor et ha'am hazeh ve'et ha'ir hazot, ka'asher yishbor et kli hayotzer asher lo yuchal leherafeh od. Thus I will break this people and this city in the same way that a potter's vessel will be broken when it can't be fixed, again. Uvatofet yikberu me'ein makom likbor. The tofet they will bury bodies to the point where there won't be any place to bury anybody else, right? It'll be packed with dead bodies. Thus I will do to this place, says Hashem, and to its inhabitants. I'll make the whole city like this burial ground. The houses of Jerusalem, the houses of the kings of Yehudah, will be impure places like the Tophet. Like all the houses where they brought sacrifices on their rooftops to all of the hosts of the heavens, and they poured wine libations, they poured wine offerings to other gods. Okay, so this is very dramatic. The language is very powerful. Yirmiyahu the symbolism here is very, 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 very obvious. This isn't subtle at all. There's the clay that can still be shaped. There's the clay that can only be broken because it's already baked, it's already fixed. Your killing of your own children in the service of idols, of other gods, is going to result in your eating the flesh of your own children. This city is going to be destroyed. I mean, that's it. So the question is, what is the purpose of this performative aspect of the prophecy? Because Yirmiyahu doesn't do this out of his own initiative. God tells him to do this. Okay, any questions before we go on? Any questions? Okay, so let's go back to the Ramban. The answer to this question, I was very, very happy to discover, I wasn't the only person who noticed the answer to this question, is actually found in the commentary of Nachmanides on Sefer Bereshit, on Genesis, when he talks about a principle in understanding the stories of the patriarchs in Genesis. Okay, and he says the following. We're here, hang on. Omar lecha klal, I will give you a generalization. Tavin oto b'chol ha'parashiyot habaot. You will understand it in all of the coming biblical portions. And this is talking about the stories of Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef and his brothers, all of those stories in Genesis. Binyan Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, in the matter of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. V'hu inyan gadol, this is a great a big idea. Hizkiru rabotenu b'derech ktsara. Our rabbis mentioned it in brief, va'amru, and they said, this is from Tanchuma, but it appears in Breshit Rabbah also, kol ma she'ira la'avot siman habanim. Whatever happened to the patriarchs is assigned to their children. ולכן יעריכו הכתובים בסיפור המסעות וחפירת הבארות ושאר המקרים. Therefore, the biblical text will speak at length about the stories of their travels, their digging of wells, and all sorts of other events that might seem trivial. ויחשוב החושב בהם כאילו הם דברים מיותרים, אין בהם תועלת. And someone reading the text, the thinker, might think that these are sort of extraneous stories or matters that have no purpose. Like, why do I need to know that Yitzchak Avinu had a quarrel with Avimelech about some wells, or that Avimelech had a quarrel with him? Or that, Yosef got lost on the way to catching up with his brothers, or whatever. Why all these stories about the Avot? You might think they have no purpose. V'kulam ba'im lelamed al ha'atid, and all of them come to teach about the future. Ki ka'asher yavo ha'mikre lenavi mishloshet ha'avot, because when something happens to a prophet, one of the three patriarchs, yitbonen mimenu hadavar hanigzar lavo lizar'o, he will think deeply about the thing that is decreed to come upon their seed, Okay, so let's stop here for just a moment and think about what he's saying here. He's saying, look, why do we need to know all of these stories about the Avot? This sounds like a tangent, but it's not. Okay, it has its application in connection with Yirmiyahu, and also all the performative aspects of what the Nevi'im do, including Yeshayahu, including Cheskel, all of these performative actions. He says, look, the patriarchs were prophets. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were prophets. How do we know that they were prophets, by the way? This is really obvious, but think about it. How do we know, Adina?
Avimelech says that Abraham's a prophet.
Yes, but we know that even before Avimelech says that. How do we know it?
Speaks to God.
God speaks to him.
Yes.
If you're speaking to God, you might be praying, and that's fine. Speak to God as much as you want and whenever you want, and that's great. But God speaks to them, and it's very, very clear that God is speaking to them. So they're prophets, right? God makes a covenant with Abraham. He speaks to him, Yitzchak, Yaakov, right? There's, chofshi, like they say, freely, right? God speaks to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Therefore, they are prophets, right? We don't see them as prophets in the style of the later prophets, but they're prophets. Well, when a prophet does something, it has an aspect of prophecy to it. Or as he says here, and I think this is where we want to, this is the important note here. He says, the person watching what the prophet does can understand from it. Hang on. I just lost my place. The person reading about this will understand. He will understand the thing that is decreed to come upon their seed. Vida, okay, and you should know, any decree of the high ones, meaning any divine decree, when it goes out of the potential of the decree to the actual implementation or outcome of the decree, the similarity to the decree will be fulfilled in any event. That means that when there's a decree about a prophetic decree or a heavenly decree about something, there's going to be a correspondence between the decree and the outcome of the decree, no matter what. And that's why he says, therefore prophets will do deeds in their prophecies, Yirmiyahu, as the word of Yirmiyahu was, Shetziva leBaruch, this we haven't gotten up to this yet, I don't know if we'll get to it, but he commands Baruch ben Neriah, his servant, his amanuensis, his Yehoshua ben Nun, right? When you finish reading the words of this scroll that I want you to read to the king, Tikshor alav even, tie a stone to it, v'hashlachto el toch prat, cast it into the Euphrates. V'amarta, and you will say, Kacha tishka Bavel, thus Bavel will sink. And he goes on, he gives a few other examples. Elisha tells the king to shoot arrows, and the arrows bear a correspondence to the wars that they will win against Aram, etc., etc., etc. Right? We can think of many examples where prophets do actions or perform actions which have a correspondence to the content of their prophecy. And then he goes on and he says the following, Ulefichach, therefore, Echazika kadosh baruch Abraham ba'aretz, God kept Abraham in Eretz Canaan, v'asalo dimyonot b'chol ha'atid le'asot b'zar'o, and did for him things that were similar to what would happen in the future to his seed. Okay, now the Ramban over the course of Sefer Bereshit develops this concept of Ma'aseh Avot Siman Lebanim. The deeds of the fathers are assigned to the sons in a very sophisticated way. He sees time as circular. He doesn't just see it as what the Avot do has an impact on the children. He also sees it as what the children do has an impact on the patriarchs. It's a complex doctrine, if you will, or a complex approach to Sefer Bereshit, and he develops the idea very well. But he is saying the following. If there's a divine decree and the prophet is delivering that divine decree, there's going to be, in the performing of the action, something that bears a resemblance. It's the, if you will, moving from the potential of the decree into the actual of something that happens in the world. Which is why when Yirmiyahu breaks that flask, that potter's vessel, right? He is performing sort of prophesying and performing what will actually happen, because the city will be broken and the people will suffer and die. All of the things that he's prophesying are expressed not just in the words, which are about a potential decree, but in the actions which sort of seal that decree, right? They carry it out into the actual in the world and have an effect on the world. So when he's manipulating, or when he's watching the potter manipulate clay, there is perhaps room for hope. But once he breaks the vessel, it's been baked into its form. They've waited too long. It's too late. And his action has the force of prophecy. Okay. So I'm going to stop now, take any questions people have. Let me just take a quick look at the chat and see if I can handle that. Okay, I think that's, there's no questions here. Anybody want to ask a question? Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Thank you so much. So basically what you're saying, if I can infer from the idea of of him breaking the flask, is the performance is what brings the prophecy to the next level.
Yes.
Like it's like a
Yes.
tool, it's the intermediary from the potential to the fulfillment.
That's right. That's why, you see, the Ramban is talking about this in connection with the actions of the Avot. And he says what the Avot do sort of set up a movement from a potential something, because they're prophets, a potential something to something that is actual and will have consequences in history, right? Now, it's not precisely the same, right? Because it's not precisely the same because, as I said, the Ramban develops this idea with regard to the patriarchs much more broadly and in different kinds of situations. But the reason Hashem wants Yirmiyahu, for example, not to marry is because the decree of him not marrying and having children is an expression of what's going to happen to the people who do have children. Their children are going to die anyway, right? Not all of them, obviously, and yes, there were survivors of the Khurban, etc. But the mass destruction is, if you will, enacted in the life of Yirmiyahu on a personal level before it actually gets played out on the national level in the world.
You could say that about Moshe as well, the same concept. What happened?
What,
I'm sorry.
What?
So for example, the fact that say that, you know, he's brought out of the water, he brings other people out of the water, right?
That's interesting. No, but that's not an action he does.
No, but it's this idea that the personal life really is completely subjugated to the national life.
His personal life is subjugated to the national life, but that's only when he takes on the role as leader of the Jewish people. Remember that the person who takes Moshe out of the water is not a prophet. She does a very great deed, right? She does a great deed, and in saving Moshe, she sets in motion an incredible historic possibility, and much of the credit for who Moshe becomes is, belongs to her, so to speak, right? But she's not a prophet. And because she's not a prophet, what she does doesn't have prophetic force. Okay? Okay, Chaya, we have a question. Right, Chaya?
Thanks. Sorry, can you hear me?
Oh, hi, I remember you. You were in my class. Yeah, hi.
Well, I wasn't in your class, but whatever, I've worked with you before. I spoke to you about
Okay, yes, I remember you. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just wondering, in the Ramban's concept of this prophetic force of prophet actions, do they know it when they're doing it, or are they like?
Oh, very interesting. So in the case of Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, Yechezkel, Treyasar, it's very clear that they know what they're doing because it is actually contained in their prophecy. With the Avot, it doesn't work that way. With the Avot, it doesn't work that way. They know that God is giving them instructions and telling them what to do or opening certain opportunities for them, but they don't know what the impact of their lives is going to be upon their children, right? Though again, if you contrast the Rashi on that pasuk with the Ramban on that pasuk, it would appear that they are sometimes able to anticipate what will happen to their descendants through their own prophetic sense. Let me just say this, when I have taught Ramban, I've spent quite a few lessons on how the Ramban develops this concept in Sefer Bereshit, and I'm really oversimplifying just to take his insight, which he does also, and extend it to the later prophets. So it's not that simple. Okay, somebody else raised a hand. 1 second, let me see if I can, somebody else raised a hand? No? 2, 3, hang on. Somebody else raised a hand. Nobody raised a hand. Okay. Okay. All right. So next week, Bezrat Hashem, we are going to continue this perek, but from a different perspective. There's going to be basically, what is the outcome of what Yirmiyahu does? Like what are the consequences for Yirmiyahu of very boldly going out there in front of the kings and the people and doing what he does dramatically, okay, And what are those consequences for him personally? And what's the impact of that? What do we learn from that? Yeah, Elle, you have a question. You
I
have
just
another-
wanted to comment that it is just amazing that Yirmiyahu just never did what Yonah did and ran away.
Oh, so that's what we're going to see next week. He doesn't run away, but there is no question that he is deeply scarred by what he has to do. And here what we're going to address, and I find this for personally the most moving part of Yirmiyahu, is that we are given an insight into his suffering. And we have to ask, what enables him to keep going when he has this terrible, thankless task? Not only a thankless task, he actually, he sees he watches the train wreck happen. He's seen it coming. He watches it happen. He hears the screams. He smells the smoke. He sees the blood. He survives the Khurban. What is it that is in Yirmiyahu that doesn't allow him to run away as Yonah does? So that's actually, we're going to talk about that Bezrat Hashem next week. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will continue next week. Bezrat Hashem, I hope we don't have to fast this year. It's been a bad enough year that maybe we just it all got paid off and maybe we won't have to fast. Okay, take care, everybody.
Thank you so much. And there are more programs coming this week, like this wonderful program. So I will link to the programs page in the chat. As well, we have a Tisha B'Av program for this Sunday, with lots of meaningful and insightful speakers. And I will link to that in the chat as well in just a moment. We hope that there is no fast this year, but if there is, we hope that you can join us and hear these wonderful speakers. All right, everyone, have a lovely day.